The mic's on, and it is 6:02, which means it's time for like a second of silence. Can we get just a second? Like, I appreciate everybody here, but it is kind of a upsetting day. You know, somber note. Thought about canceling the meeting, but Queen Elizabeth has sadly passed. I do now. It's sunk in. I'm not gonna lie. For anybody that was in lab with me earlier today, there was a bit of denial, stages of grief and whatnot. Was I convinced that she was weekend at Bernie's for the past like year or so? Yeah, kind of. I was pretty sure she died a while ago, but happened today. So sorry to start off the meeting on a low note, but we're going into VMs now. So whiplash. That was just to get attention. I was told the first 30 seconds of a YouTube video is the most important one for engagement. So that'll be the first part of our YouTube video today. Sweet. All right. Hello, everybody. David again. Some of the cabinet's gone today. That's why it's mostly just me and James. But we're going to be doing, and William. But Trent is gone shelling out for John Deere, I guess, so whatever. But yeah, so hello everybody. We're going to talk a little bit. This is going to be pretty informal, pretty off the cuff. I'm going to be in and out of this presentation, doing some demos, setting some stuff up manually, and then we'll, for anybody that noticed, I am in my Windows install right now, which I don't like, so I'll probably switch OSs in the middle of this presentation, honestly, once I get past the parts that I need Windows for. So. The overarching talk, and hopefully what you guys saw in Discord, is that we're talking about virtual machines, but in general, beyond just that, I want to talk about how you right now can get access to tooling, Linux tooling, Kali Linux, for just messing with and experimenting with different pen testing tools and common tools that are used in like CTFs or just security in general, you know, like Nmap, John the Ripper, Hashcat, Fuff, all these different tools. There's a lot of really easy ways to get access to them, and I want to make sure that people have time to just play around with it, mess around with it. I really think that's the best way to learn it. In 230, CPRE 230, when I'm TAing right now, you'll get more formal introduction to how to use Linux as an operating system and stuff like that. But that's not until your sophomore year, and there's a lot of time before that for some people to keep learning. So we're going to talk about Linux in general, and the three main ways that I see for you guys to get hands-on experience with it right now and get more comfortable with it as an operating system. So with that said, here are the three options I was going to talk about. It's a pretty bland slide, but I kind of put these in order of easiest to do to most, I don't want to say difficult, because even dual booting isn't like hard, but it's just more effort than WSL. So we're talking about Windows subsystem for Linux. Hands up, who's heard of WSL? I think I asked this last time. Cool, we're about 50-50 on that. So we're gonna explain what WSL is, why it exists, how you guys can use it, and why it's probably the best option for a lot of people. Then we'll go into virtual machines more classically. So virtual machine technology or virtualization has been around for a long time now. There are a lot of different platforms to do it. I'm going to talk about the ones that I've used before and actually what you can use from the university, because as students here, you get access to some free technology, which is pretty cool. And I feel like they don't do a good job of telling you that. So we'll go over some of the free virtualization software you guys can get. And then we're going to talk about dual booting or bare metal installs of Linux. So how you can take your laptop, which seems like most people are probably running Windows on or maybe Mac. But we're going to take your laptop and actually make it into something that's running at least part of its hard drive is dedicated to running Linux, which is, I think, like the best operating system for a laptop, considering Windows is kind of a pig when it comes to resources, and it likes to turn on randomly to update shit, even if it's in your backpack and the fans are all blocked because it's in a backpack, and then it gets really, really hot. I forgot that it did that, so there's our three things. Okay, we're going to dive right into Windows subsystem for Linux. I apologize for no pretty pictures on this side. There will be more pictures later, but there's not like a logo for Windows subsystem for Linux or like any sort of insignia for it, so I had nothing to put here. So what is WSL? WSL, or the Windows Subsystem for Linux, is a feature that was added into Windows 10 like a couple of years ago now, probably? Yeah, a while ago. It originally was like this fancy developer feature that would give you access to the actual Linux kernel inside of Windows. So it's not really virtualization in the traditional sense, because virtualization involves like mimicking the kernel and mimicking Linux in general in software, but what we're looking at with the Windows subsystem for Linux is it actually installs the Linux kernel inside of the larger Windows install and allows you to run programs and applications directly on that kernel. So it's really close to bare metal, but it has a couple drawbacks. So when we're looking at the pros, hopefully you guys can see this when I do the demo. It's dead simple to install. I'm pretty sure you don't even need to go into the developer options anymore to enable anything on Windows. You definitely don't have to on Windows 11. You might have to on 10. But after that, it's one click to install operating systems. It's got like, I'd say like 85 to 90% of all of the features you would want out of a normal Linux install. And it, like I said, it actually installs the kernel on there. So the performance that you're going to get out of this install is going to be a lot better than a traditional virtual machine, where that virtual machine might be installed on a slow hard drive, and then it takes a number of read cycles to get through and actually run any of the applications or instructions that you're trying to run on that virtual machine. So the performance is actually really awesome for the things that do work. A couple cons, and both of these cons are, I don't think, super important. They might just be my ignorance. GUIs, graphical user interface applications. If anybody wants to call me out on this, I've had a lot of issues getting applications that use graphics inside of Linux to work. So like if you have a Linux app that when you run it, it opens up a window, like an actual like ZenMap is like a graphical version of Nmap and a bunch of stuff. Those have been really iffy for me. I'm pretty sure if Trent was here, he'd argue with me. I've been told that there is updates for it and you can get it to work because WSL has an X server now, and an X server is used for running graphics, but I personally have not had any issues with that. Yes?
I kind of got an X server running and I'm using it as stuff and it seems to work just fine.
Okay, on Windows for WSL and stuff? Okay, sweet. So I'm pretty sure that might not be a con. I'm pretty sure there is a good way to get set up. I just haven't tested on the newest version of it, so maybe take that one with a grain of salt. The other one is reverse shells are a little bit weird. So, and more generally from that, it's a little hard to get another computer to connect to something you have running inside of WSL because it is natted behind normal Windows. So I'll be able to show that off a little bit when we are actually messing around with stuff outside of this presentation. But the IP address that you get inside of WSL isn't accessible by things outside on the internet. So in security particularly, this is kind of important when, do we have a dry erase marker anywhere? Oh yeah, we do have like 3 up here. This is kind of particular when if you have something on the internet that you're attacking, if it's a web server, and you upload a payload to that web server that's supposed to call back to your computer, it's supposed to connect back and give you some information. If your computer is here, and inside of here you have WSL, this server isn't going to be able to reach that WSL instance without some fancy port forwarding and NAT rules. So I think there's a way to fix that, but essentially you can't have things from the outside connect back to you, which is a little troublesome. But either way, all right, so WSL for installing. This is the sort of how-to to get it set up. And I'm going to go through the steps and get this here. And if anybody has Windows, feel free to follow along because this is a super easy to set up, non-destructive. It's not going to mess with any of your files. Just a nice feature to have. So essentially, you can open up a command prompt, preferably an admin one, so that you CMD here and just run as admin. Whoops. And I'll prompt you up with a opened a couple of them actually. A couple more. I clicked it too many times. My bad. Okay, maybe we're good now. So open up a command prompt with administrative privileges, and you can just do WSL -- install, and that will install a newish version of Ubuntu by default, which for anybody unfamiliar with Linux, Ubuntu is kind of like, I don't know, just become the de facto Linux install for a lot of things. For better or worse, it's I would say pretty inoffensive. It's very bare bones. It does what you need, and it's pretty user friendly. So that installs it by default, and that's actually what I have installed on here. I have Ubuntu on Windows. But you can also, there are a lot of other distributions that are just as easy to set up. So if we do WSL tac list, let me make this bigger actually. Maybe not. I have this open in a different terminal, one sec. Okay, so this is the same command line. Let's just do WSL -- list online. And so this is going to list out some more of the distributions. And there's one in here that's probably pretty relevant for us as security professionals. Hands up, who's heard of Kali Linux as a Linux distro? Sweet. So more people than have heard of WSL, which is cool. So Kali Linux is built on Ubuntu essentially, and it's like a security branded version of it. So it comes with a lot of tools that are really commonly used in the field, pre-installed, pre-set up, and ready for you to start messing with. So it was the first version of Linux that I ever got experience with. I had a parent that helped me install it on a junk old laptop that I bought off of eBay or something when I was a kid. So once we pick this out, and there's other distributions you can get experience with if you want to try out Ubuntu or OpenSUSE or anything like that. There are a couple other ones. And this isn't the entire list. You can go out and find them on your own. These are just the easiest. So from there, we can just do dash install -d for the distribution and hit it with Kali Linux. And I haven't run this, so let's see. Oh Lord, I don't know how long this might take. We'll let that run in the background. But that's like literally it. If anybody runs this and it doesn't work, there's one optional thing you might have to do. I had to do this when I set this up on this laptop, but this was a while ago in an older version of Windows 10. So I think this might be by default now. But if anybody runs into any issues, you can go to the search bar and search enable, where is it called? Maybe Windows features. Yeah, you can turn Windows features on and off. And doing that will open up this prompt here. And this has a bunch of extra features that you can enable inside of Windows. This is where I had to do it. And then at the very bottom, there's just a check mark for the Windows subsystem for Linux. You can check that and kind of reboot, and it should be fine. Again, if anybody wants to follow along and tell me if that's not needed anymore, I know it's not in Windows 11. I feel like it's probably not in Windows 10 anymore. But cool. So with all that set up, this install, this download anyway, is finished, and it's installing now for Kali Linux rolling. And presumably when that gets done, it's actually going to launch into it. And hey, so now we have this new terminal. You can see here, got this fancy logo down here for Kali Linux. This is, like after that one command of installing it, this is a terminal-based, you can give it a username, icebear, and a super secret password that's definitely not root backwards. And there we go. So literally in that, just sitting here, we have a full version of Linux running. It makes its own little virtual environment. You can still access your normal stuff if you go to Mount C, users, and then David, and you can access all of your normal Windows files on top of this little Linux install. And yeah, as you can see, it's running Kali 2019.2, so a little out of date. But yeah, it's a really good starter foundation for it, because not only is this going to allow you to get used to using Linux in general, I guess show of hands, who has used Linux before in some capacity? Okay, cool. So yeah, not only is this a good way to just get more comfortable with using Linux, so the next time you need to work on some files for a project or use GCC or anything, never mind, GCC isn't on here.
You might also need to do like a full Kali install. This might be the basic Kali install, and then there's a full install of all of those. Yeah.
Okay, sweet. So yeah, this is going to come with the basic. This is at least going to get you started with Linux, but then I'm assuming if you have any tools, yeah, so it doesn't have like Nmap or it doesn't have John or any of those fancy tools, those are going to require more apt updates installs. Is there a one-liner for that I remember?
Yes, I don't know what the one-liner is. I'm pretty sure if you just look at Kali full
William, you're
install,
on it.
you can probably find it.
Yeah, so, what? Okay, yeah. So either way, I've only ever used Ubuntu. I've never actually even installed the Kali version of this on WSL. This is my actual terminal for WSL on Windows here, but it has a lot of the basic stuff as well. This has Nmap and this has John and different things like that. So yeah, I would really recommend this for anybody that has a Windows laptop and has been trying to get access to Linux or any sort of resources like that. It's really is that simple. You saw the entire install process from start to finish here in this presentation alone. So oh yeah, there's one other thing I wanted to mention. So that's enough to get running in this nice little terminal here. But if you guys want to play around with more customization options and make things look nicer, you can also come in here, and this is the Windows terminal. So in the bottom right here, you can actually get it from the Microsoft Store. The bottom right is what it looks like in the Microsoft Store. It's a fancy new terminal that you can download, and it makes everything better. It just makes things look nicer. It allows you to have multiple tabs at the top here for this is the Windows command line. This is my Linux one. If I restarted, I could open up a PowerShell one really easily. It puts everything nice in one spot, and it gives you a ton of options to make it look nice. You can set window opacity and diffusion stuff, set a bunch of cool colors, all sorts of crazy stuff. So I would really recommend throwing to the Windows Store and getting this Windows Terminal app installed while you're setting up WSL, just because it makes things easier and look nicer. So any outstanding questions about WSL. We're going to kind of move on to the next form of virtualization that I wanted to talk about, but I wanted to take a break here and see, is there anybody who's like super confused about what WSL is, why you might want to use it, how to go about setting it up? Did anybody try to follow those steps and not have success, anything like that? Sweet, looks good. I'm gonna take that as a big thumbs up. So, cool. I think that's pretty much everything. WSL, good stuff. Highly recommend. Yes.
Of those two, which would you recommend for like?
The Kali install or the Ubuntu one?
Yeah.
Well, I think a good question, because what's the difference between them? If Kali doesn't come with the tools, okay.
Literally
It's installed in Ubuntu when you install the Kali.
Yeah. So why are they two separate things on?
I come with one or two.
I think it's just the name.
I think it's pretty arbitrary. Now that I know that there's a separate one-liner for installing tools, I would probably just install Ubuntu. That's just what I've always done. And then you can install tools on top of that. That's what I've always done. So this was a bare bones Ubuntu install when I got it. It didn't have any fancy tmucks or anything set up. But then, you can add tools as you go along, sudo apt install, whatever you want. And that's kind of what I've been doing. So I would usually recommend just installing the normal Ubuntu one, and then as you go along and you learn new tools and there's new things you want to play around with, just throw them in here and test them out, because it's really, it's a real easy environment. I haven't broken it yet, and I've probably tried pretty hard. So, but yeah, good question. So now that I know that, probably not a ton of reasons to actually use one over the other, but whatever. So, cool. All right, jumping on. I was going to talk about the other one next, but we're going to go straight into dual booting. Which is what the elite hackers do. It's super cool. But either way, essentially what you're doing with dual booting is you're, as the image suggests, kind of just sawing your computer in half, or the hard drive at least. So you're taking your hard drive and you're cutting it in half and you're saying, Windows, you monster, you get half of this at best. You can have 250 gigs of my 500 gig hard drive or whatever. And the other half you save and you say, Windows, it does not matter what's here, don't touch it, it's not for you, and then you secretly put Linux on there and then only use that part. And you don't tell Windows that you're never coming back. You just make it seem like, oh, well, I have you there in case I need it, but I'm never going to use it. So anyway, that's what I've done. Talking about the pros a little bit, dual booting is where you're going to get the best performance, because instead of a virtual machine where you're virtualizing all of the instructions and the hardware, you're going to have access to bare metal performance. It's Linux at its peak. It's installed directly on your hard drive, and it has full access to your CPU, your GPU, and the RAM and everything. Even WSL has to go through some extra hoops and overhead due to Windows running on top or beneath WSL anyway. So this is really where Linux is going to shine through for performance-wise. And I especially want to make that point here because on laptops, where you have more restricted not only resources but also cooling overhead, as things get hotter, they run slower, and Linux is just going to be better at preventing that. I've had way better experiences running Linux daily on my laptop than I have Windows. It just utilizes resources better. It doesn't use as much stuff in the background. It's not constantly trying to send like all of my data and location history to Microsoft all the time for no reason. So I've had better experiences with performance on Linux on a laptop. I still run Windows on my desktop at home because that's got like full-size graphics cards, big heat sinks for the CPU, lots of fans and stuff. I haven't had any issues with that, and because I game on that. And gaming on Linux, I don't care what anybody says, gaming on Linux is still really iffy. So, cool. Pro, like I said, pretty much everything goes pretty self-explanatory. Everything you could want from Linux, it has all the features. It has graphics. It has whatever you want to install on it. It's all good. Pro or con, you still have access to your Windows partition. So if, like, for example, you're giving a presentation where you need to talk about WSL or give an example of dual booting, you still have access to your Windows partition to go. And there are some tools that literally only work in Windows, like DNSpy is one, or like x86 debug, DBG are two. They're like reverse engineering debugging tools that only run on Windows. So having that option to run Windows natively is pretty cool. So I keep it around. The only downside is that if you don't set up your grub menus correctly for when you're booting into things, you could accidentally reboot into Windows, and nobody wants that. So Dual booting cons, it is a little bit more work. Like I said, it's not necessarily more difficult than anything else, but it is more effort. You're gonna have to go out of your way to actually sit down and maybe spend an hour or two getting this figured out. And I feel like I have to throw this in there as a disclaimer. It was pretty nerve-wracking for me when I was using this like random partitioning tool that I found to split my hard drive. And I kind of just had to, you know, like, it was like, trust me, bro, I'm not gonna like burn all of your shit. But needless to say, I backed up all my data on my Windows drive that I cared about before I went and dual booted, just on the off chance that something gets messed up, a partition gets overwritten, I select the wrong partition while I'm installing Linux, and it burns everything down. So small possibility to lose all of your data on Windows. But it should be in the cloud anyway, right? It should be in Google Drive. Unless you listen to the university and they say you can only have 3 gigs of Google Drive space, and then you have 150, and they're like, well, anybody else get that hate mail? Is that just me? That about like, yeah, you need to reduce your Google Drive usage, otherwise the university's gonna have to pay a fine. And you're like, well, you already took all my money, so where's that at? Pay the fine with that. Okay, so we're gonna talk a little bit about the how-to. This isn't gonna be as step-by-step as the WSL, mostly because I've already dual booted mine, so I'm not gonna split the hard drive again. But the first key for Windows anyway is to find a partitioning tool or a manager that's gonna allow you to, you have to move a lot of things around. So on, how many laptops here came pre-installed with Windows 11? What about Windows 10? Cool, that's very much everybody. I don't care about the Mac users. We'll talk about the Mac users. But, when Windows installs there, it really likes to be where it's at, and it doesn't like to be moved a ton. So much so that to move partitions around, you have to reboot into a different operating system, and then you can move those partitions around because Windows won't let you move stuff while it's trying to use it, which kind of makes sense, but it's also kind of clingy, not my favorite. So let me see, I think I got this right. There are partitions, yeah, AOMEI is the partition tool that I found. There's a freeware version that's kind of meh. It's got a lot of ads, and I don't know, it might be sending data around the place. So use your own caution, maybe uninstall it right after you're done using it. But this is what I used. I actually still have it installed on my desktop here, way over here. I installed League of Legends. And you can open this up, and it's a really nice user interface. So this represents the one 500 gig-ish hard drive that I have in this laptop here. And originally, this C drive for the OS spanned the entire space there. So it took up 500-ish gigs after Windows's random, like, there's like a bunch of other little partitions, but essentially it had one big space for all of Windows. And what this does, there's a resize and move partitions option down here. And this lets you say, hey, I actually want to take that C drive partition and I want to cut it way in half. I actually can't here because I have a ton of data on here, so the most I can do is like move it between 200 and 225 gigs, but I guess stepping back a second, a prereq for cutting your hard drive in half is making sure you have half of your hard drive free. So I had to go through and clear out a ton of data on here to get my hard drive down from the like 450 gigs it was at to under 250. So then I could split it with the 250 I have taken up for Windows and the 250 I wanted for Linux. So clear out half your hard drive space. It doesn't have to be half. It can be, I don't know, if laptops are coming with terabyte drives or 2 terabyte drives or whatever. I have Linux running on a 250 gig partition, so you could run it on 10 gigs, 20 gigs. It doesn't matter. It's just up to you how much data you're going to keep on it, how much you're going to use. So yeah, hopping in here and adjusting the size of your partition, you can cut that in half. And then you'll have to do some fancy, like you'll have to apply here, and it's going to take over your computer for a sec. It's going to boot into its own fancy tooling, because like I said, it can't be using Windows while it tries to do this stuff. It'll boot into its own fancy tools, and then it will shrink everything, rearrange all of your partitions, push them to one side. And then at the end, if it didn't break anything, you'll have this other half down here that's empty and used for anything. Windows doesn't know about it. Windows can't see it. It just says, hey, I have my space. I'm not going to touch anything outside of it, hopefully, usually. And then you'll have this awesome free space where you can install anything. So that's the first thing. Like I said, it's going to be a bit more of a surface level overview of this instead of a more step-by-step thing. But step one, find a partitioning tool. I'll post these slides somewhere so that you guys, if anybody wants to go through and find these specific tools, you can. 2 is what I just showed you. Cut your hard drive in half in software, not physically. But that's the easy part. That's sliding around those partitions and rearranging everything. And then 3 is making a bootable USB. There are 2 really common devices for this. So in order to install an operating system, you have to have a OS to install. So that's going to require an ISO file, an ISO file, and a USB. If you had a CD drive on your laptop, which I don't think anyone does, you could burn it onto a CD and install it that way, but I haven't done that since like 2016. So make a USB, get yourself a little USB, I don't know, like 20 gigs or whatever is probably fine. And then one of these softwares is designed to take an operating system install and organize it on a USB in the correct format so that you can plug it in, boot to the USB, and then from the USB you tell it where to install, essentially. So again, bit of an overview. And then you're going to boot that USB. I think I had, no, okay, I included those in different slides because so I have these linked somewhere else, but I want to throw these up right now. For anybody looking to get into actual VMs, which we'll talk about in a second, you're going to want to install some operating system ISO files, and ISOs are just disk images which are used solely for the purpose of installing operating systems or for running them. So we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to the actual virtual machine part of it, but these are really the 4 steps. This is why I said it's not necessarily more complicated. It's just going to take more effort on your part. It's going to take you to go find some software to download that's not necessarily from the best places, and then you're going to actually have to find yourself a USB, and your laptop's going to be turned off, rebooting, or installing stuff for, I don't know, maybe an hour in total. So I would sit down when you have a little bit of time and just kind of tinker with it. But like I said, make sure you have all of your important information backed up first from Windows, just in case you mess something up or if something breaks along the way, whatever. Again, I know that wasn't as step-by-step and as like succinct as the WSL thing, but are there any high-level questions about dual booting, how-tos, why you'd want to do it? Does anybody have any suggestions on operating systems? Yes.
So I had a question about step 1. So do you need a partition manager to split up the hard drive, or could you also just use the Windows disk management software?
Yeah, I've had a lot of issues with it. This one here. So yeah, that's a really good question. Windows does come with its own disk manager, which is here. And as you can see, it has my partitions. So this first one is the OS it's running on now, the C drive. And then way over here, we have my other big Linux install, which is this one. And I've had a lot of issues with this because it doesn't like shrinking its own partitions. So that's why I said that you needed to boot into something that isn't Windows, because while Windows is running, it physically cannot move its own files because it's like trying to pull yourself up from your bootstraps. Like you literally can't because you're also using them. So I don't think you can. I'm not gonna say you can't. Things have changed a lot since I've done this, but I wasn't able to, and so I found some lists from Forbes or from CNET or whatever of partition manager tools, and so those are much more intense programs that will go and they boot to their own versions of their own little operating systems, and then they move everything around for you. So this is pretty good for if I wanted to delete partitions. So if I just wanted to trash my Linux stuff, I could delete all of that right here and make up a big space. But it's not good for shrinking down partitions that already exist. It's good at deleting them and making them, but not resizing them, which is unfortunate. So yeah, as far as I know, you can't use the actual built-in disk manager for it, but like I said, these ones are the best ones I could find. So, but yeah, good question. Stevie, yes?
Here for Cali.
Oh yeah, okay, so we were talking about OSs real quick. So we said most people have heard of Kali. I'm assuming a significant portion have also heard of Ubuntu. Has anybody heard of Parrot OS? Okay, that's actually a lot more than I thought. I didn't know about Parrot until last year, actually. Yeah, a year ago, John and Isabel and a bunch of people started running it on their laptops, and I was like, what the hell? And so I threw it on mine and gave it a try. That's also my favorite part about Linux. You can have all of your user data stored in one partition and then the OS in another one, and you can just delete the OS partition, put in a new version of Linux, and be up and rolling with all of your data again, like no problem. So it's really fun to have a dual booted machine where you can just test out new operating systems. So yeah, Parrot is another security-oriented operating system, a lot like Kali, except I've just had better experiences with it. So with Kali, I've had random updates brick it. I've had tools stop working, literally just not booting anymore sometimes. And I'm sure like a good portion of it is human error and me being terrible at it. But Parrot seems more like a fully fledged security OS, whereas Kali more feels like Ubuntu with a bunch of security stuff and kind of stapled on top of it and glued in. So we can talk about it a little bit more when we do actual virtual machines, but I prefer Parrot OS as my go-to thing for installing on anything now. For my work computer over the summer, I used Kali and I had no problems, but that was mostly because the company wanted me to install Kali. So not a huge difference. I think it's personal preference. I would encourage everybody to try it out themselves on their own and figure out what they like. But yeah, so wanted to get that out over for anybody who didn't know what Parrot was. I would encourage people to check it out. It's a lot of fun. So cool. We're moving right along here. Let me think about how I want to do this. I do have VirtualBox. Okay, never mind. We're good.
You can also do Parrot with WSL, but it is a lot more complicated.
Oh, like install it in WSL?
Yeah, because pretty much what I have to do is you have to get it running, and then you have to actually RDP into the locally running Parrot machine to be able to have like the desktop and all that kind of stuff. Otherwise, it just works like Ubuntu or Kali.
Any other anecdotes people want to share? I am tired of using Windows, and those are all the things I need to show you guys in Windows. So I'm going to switch over to my Linux distro. And maybe, I don't know when the display kicks in, so if it does work, you can see my grub menu. I don't think that will probably be through, no, it's not, okay. Either way, I'm switching over. So when you do boot a machine, you usually want to boot to the Linux distribution first so that you can open up a boot menu, and then you can choose between, do I want to boot into my Linux or my Windows or my Mac or whatever. Boom, there we go. So we're back in Parrot now. See how fast I booted up? Could you imagine if I was trying to switch to Windows? I'd be here for another 10 minutes. To actually split up the hard drive and stuff? I'd say, I did it in a lab period. I did it in 381. I did it in a 381 lab period. How long are those periods? Who's in 381 right now? Is anybody in C period? How long is a lab period? 2 hours?
Yeah, I think 2 hours.
No more than 2 hours. I did the whole thing in a lab period, and I think it was about an hour. And then it was an hour of me just like messing around and setting up stuff. Okay, let me pull up the slideshow that I already had open here. And we'll finish up the last little bit of this presentation. Oh, it closed it. Any other questions? Anybody else have an OS that they think is super cool? Has anybody used, what's that crazy one, Temple OS? Anybody installed Temple OS recently? That happened at the CDC one year, or maybe 2 years in a row. They had us install Temple OS as a VM, and then we had to go in and they hit a flag in some insane file, and we had to go find it. It was terrible.
That's
really.
For anybody that doesn't know, Temple OS is a meme operating system that was developed by possibly the second coming of Christ. Temple OS. I haven't found, is there an ISO you can download for that? I don't know if I found one.
I know LTT played with it. I'm not sure if they
Yeah.
ISO in the.
Somebody has an ISO somewhere, because if there's an ISO in ISO somewhere, because they use it. TempleOS.org.
Yeah, oh my god.
Yeah, you can watch Frederick Knudsen's video.
That is a really good video on it. It's unfortunate, because that guy was probably he is really, really smart. I'm going to throw this up there just for the memes. This is Temple OS for anybody that doesn't want to use anything ever again. Oh God.
Imagine not using Holy C for everything.
Oh God, do I download this? How long is the download? They can't be that long, right?
Do you trust this?
Oh shit, it was fast. That was fast.
All of this myself by scratch.
Yeah, okay, well, you know what, for fun, for the memes, when we get to the virtual, I was going to make a virtual machine of like a Ubuntu server. We'll make a Temple OS virtual machine, see if we can get that to boot.
That was a 16 megabyte file.
Temple OS is insane. The guy who made it, okay, so memes aside, the guy who made it was schizophrenic and he's dead now. But, no, that's not a meme, that's not a joke. The guy was very mentally disturbed, but he was unbelievably smart and really good at programming. This OS he built from scratch. He made his own operating system. He made his own kernel. He made his own graphics
Programming language?
His own programming language. He called it Holy C. Yeah, he called it Holy C. It's impossible to write in.
Use like any GNU
No, yeah, he made every part of this operating system, every line of code from scratch, and he was insane. So, mad props to that dude. What?
It's
Oh, it
probably
definitely is
Linux.
Linux.
When did you
Yeah.
build it?
Oh,
2005.
was it 2005?
That's not
2005 is when it was developed, I guess.
like Wikipedia. So.
That's what Wikipedia says. I don't know. It's weird because he kind of worked on it forever and would just post randomly about it on forums and be like, look at how amazing this operating system is. And it had no networking, right? Like no connection to the internet. Yeah, he refused to build in any networking because he's like, you don't need that. That's stupid. So,
It used to be like a Raspberry Pi, you just messed around with it. That's
yeah, no. So we'll try. We'll give that a shot. I've never installed one successfully. So that brings us nicely to virtual machines. This is probably the virtualization tactic that most people are familiar with. It was for me anyway when I started doing this stuff. So who here has ever used VirtualBox, that thing in the bottom right for making VMs? Sweet. It's glad to see that's still popular because I used that when I was a Zoomer like you guys. So virtual machines, we're going to talk about some pros and cons here real quick. Virtual machine pros, you have more control over the resources you get. With WSL and with dual booting, you can't really select exactly how much of your system is dedicated to that particular OS. With dual booting, for example, all of your resources are there. And with WSL, some nebulous amount of your Windows ones are there. But with this one, as you'll see when we make one, you can literally just select how much RAM, exactly how many megabytes of RAM you want. You can select how many CPU cores or how much percent of your CPU you want to give it. You can choose how big the hard drive is, all sorts of stuff. So it's awesome. More host isolation is a big one, especially for security researchers. So if you're going to be detonating malware inside of a VM, you should not be doing that on a dual booted laptop, and you probably shouldn't do it inside a WSL either, because that has direct access to your Windows partition and your laptop. With a virtual machine, you can isolate all of those resources. So if you cut off the networking and you make sure that you're not having any shared clipboards or anything between your host OS and your VM, you can more safely run malware. I'm not going to say it's totally safe. I don't want people running a bunch of ransomware or something and then it's somehow breaking out of a VM and breaking everything else. I don't think it would. That would be like crazy complicated for ransomware. But this is the most secure way to run insecure or dangerous code, is to put it inside of a VM, see what happens, and then if it breaks the VM, just trash the VM and start again. Leading us into the second point, easy snapshotting and reverting. I would really, really encourage everybody the first time they make a VM to snapshot it and then break everything and then revert to the snapshot. Just to get comfortable with the fact that, hey, everything inside of here is pretty temporary, and if I break it, that's NBD. And the more snapshots you take, the less you have to worry about that, you know? Take a snapshot right when you install it, then fill it up with all of your tools and all the things you want to use the VM for, take another snapshot, and then start breaking stuff. And so if you install a tool that breaks all of your other tools, just revert back. Not a big deal. So that's probably the most compelling reason to use any VMs. And if you're in 230, 231, or 331, you'll probably use that pretty consistently. You'll end up borking something up that's going to mess with your entire network. And so this is probably going to be the easiest way to get around that. And then cons, not a ton of them, but this is probably the slowest option of the three when it comes to performance. So there's a lot of overhead from the hypervisor, which is responsible for virtualizing it. We're not going to go super in depth about like type 1 versus type 2 hypervisors and what a hypervisor is and all that. It's not important for just getting your hands dirty with an operating system. So it is a little bit slower, and the resource usage can also be a con. So you might give it a lot of resources initially, but you're not using all of those resources inside the VM. You know, if you give it 8 gigs of your 16 gigs of RAM, but you're only using 2 gigs inside the operating system, your normal host OS, like Windows or whatever you're running, still won't be able to access that entire 8 because it's been reserved for the virtual machine. So if you allocate too many resources, it can be a bit of an issue and drag down your host operating system's performance. So there is a fine balance between allocating a bunch of your resources or none of your resources. So anyway, that long spiel out of the way, what do you need to get started with a VM for anybody that isn't familiar? There are 2 awesome resources. So first off, Oracle's VM VirtualBox. This is still supported. It's on 6.1 right now. I actually have it installed right now. There it is, sweet. So this is like the easiest, it's free, quick download for setting up VMs. This is what we'll try to install Temple OS with in a second. I would really encourage everybody to download this if they're not going to do WSL or dual booting. This is the software that I've used forever. It's still used in a lot of classes here. 252, if anybody's in that Linux class, right? It's 252. If anybody's in 252, they're going to use this for all of your homework assignments. So just good to have around and be familiar with how to use it. But on top of that, if you are, like I think most of you are, a student here at Iowa State, you have access to some premium ass software. So this is the software for students page. If you haven't been here before, I'd recommend checking it out. I just Googled Iowa State University software for students. It's got a lot of stuff that you can usually get access to. There's some stuff that's college specific, like I think design gets like the Adobe suite. We don't, which is kind of shitty. But way down here at the bottom, we have VMware products. And if you hit download on this, it's going to take you to on the hub where you can log in with your Okta stuff, or it'll auto-log you in because it's single sign-on. And here you can start seeing some of the cool stuff you can do here. So on top of every student here getting a free Windows 10 key, which is pretty cool if you're building a PC and you want to put Windows on there, but you don't want to pay like the $80+ it is to put Windows on there. It's like $100, what? Windows is free if you don't want to activate it. So you can get a free download and just install it, but then you're limited to some arbitrary, like you can't like change your desktop background, you can't rename stuff, there's a watermark in the bottom right, you look like a peasant, it's a whole thing. So if you want to use free Windows, that's super cool, do that, it's super economical. But I feel like a lot of people don't know this because I've asked other people if I can use their Windows key for something else because I've already used mine and somebody else's, and they're like, I didn't even know I had one. So use this if you want, it's pretty cool. So on top of that, you also have VMware here, and there's a lot of cool VMware products. And VMware is the pay-to-win solution to VMs. So VMware Workstation Pro, I think the 16X one, this is super cool. I don't have it on my Linux install here, but I have it on my desktop at home. And if you ever ask me a question in office hours for 2:30 or 2:31 or 3:31, I'm going to pull up like all of your VMs on Workstation Pro because it lets you make a bunch of tabs and all the tabs can be different VMs. It's really easy to search through VMs and look for things. This is like a must-have if you're going to operate multiple VMs in one, trying to manage multiple without having like 6 windows open at the same time. They're all overlaid over each other and gross and stuff. So shouting this out, again, I'm going to post the slide deck so that you guys can have the links to these, but definitely check out the free software for students. VMware Workstation Pro is awesome. So you have a VM manager now, so you have something to create VMs with and operate them. Now you need an ISO, and an ISO is what we just downloaded for Temple OS. So like I said, we have a couple here. We've got Parrots, we've got Kallis, and we've got Ubuntu's, I think were the 3 that I linked here. So all of these have different, different features, different pros and cons. There's like a million YouTube videos of people comparing all the different versions of these Linux distros. So if you want a more detailed breakdown, go to that. I would choose Kali is probably a good starting point for a lot of people, as long as you switch to dark mode. You can just install it here. This has virtual machines ready to download, so you just open up a virtual machine. Or you can download the bare metal ISO and install that. And then, like I said, I gave that spiel earlier. Parrot's fun. It's a different, if you're bored and you don't like Kali anymore or you hate Ubuntu or whatever, give Parrot a try. So those are the ISOs. And then if anybody can read this, that's super elite speak for start hacking. Does everybody get that for the last part? Did you guys get hacking out of that? Right? Okay. All right. I'm not very up to date on elite speak, so I thought that was pretty hard to read. But, okay. So let's dive into creating a VM. Where did I put that VM manager? Okay, so here's a VM manager. Here's a VirtualBox. We're going to go ahead and do new because we're going to create a new VM from scratch. And, oh my God, we're going to call it the Temple. Temple. We're going to go Temple. Oh, this will be an interesting question. What do I put for the type of operating system?
I did other. It seems to be working fine for me.
Other. Is it 64?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And then this is just where you want to save it. Whatever. Next. All right. We're looking for memory size. Any recommendations for memory size?
I'm doing.
What?
I gave it a gig for mine.
I was gonna say it can't need that much, right?
16 gigs.
I don't even think they had. Yeah, there's a chance they didn't even have gigs of memory back in the day. So.
Use 512 megabytes of RAM.
All right, we're gonna go 1024. So we'll go with gig. 1024, about a gig or gig. Okay, cool.
Wrong.
Create a virtual hard disk. So the recommended size for the disk is 2 gigs. We'll probably update it a little bit. VDI, this is all good stuff here. Yeah, so here's where it's going to ask you how big you want the hard disk. So we gave it the RAM. We told it what operating system is going to be on it. We're going to give it some more. How much?
Do you have 2 terabytes?
I do not have 2 terabytes on here.
Gigs were you given?
Yeah, the ISO was, but if I install, you know what? We'll go 20, 25.
Dude, I doubt you need more than like 10.
All right, we'll go 10. We're gonna go 10 gigs. Okay.
If I'm wrong, you can.
So now we have a boilerplate dummy block that is just a VM. But what's a VM without an operating system? So before we actually boot this up, we have to go into the settings for this, and we look at storage. So in here, you can see, oh god. Okay. So we have an optical drive. And for any boomers out there who remember CD drives, this is a CD drive. You need to put the operating system disk in the CD drive to install an operating system. This has all been virtualized. So if we come up here and we look at this, we can choose a virtual optical disk. So choose a disk file. In my downloads, I should have, oh god, it was called like, it had an ISO that was all capital, and I don't know if that's messing it up. One sec.
Did you download it?
Yeah, of course. Did I download it?
16 megabytes.
Work when I just downloaded it and did it.
Yeah, okay, one sec. Let me,
Yeah, 'cause those are all big ISO files.
boom! It had ISO with all caps as the extension, and it didn't like that. So as you can see, I have a couple other ones. So if you want to be, please don't install this, but if you want to do normal stuff, I also have the Ubuntu Live Server. I was going to do that as a demo, but this is kind of funny. So use a better one. I also have Windows 10. I have a Windows 10 VM on here that sometimes I'll use if I'm in a pinch, but we're going to plug in that. So now it essentially has that ISO in the disk drive, and we're going to go ahead and hit OK and power it up, maybe? I don't know what's going to happen. Oh wow, it's actually putting it into the thing. Where's? Oh, it's on this monitor. Oh boy, one sec. Oh god, it looks so gross. I can't drag it. What?
Why is this actually with power?
I can't drag this window.
There's a show button.
Well, it's open on this monitor. On this.
Just like swap.
Okay, yeah, hold up. We're gonna.
Does it work? We can use like the super key, like shit.
Oh god, it's done.
Windows.
It's done.
Okay, hold up. We're gonna merge everything over here. Okay, everybody see this now? It's not gonna scale to this monitor at all.
2005 though.
Yeah, but this was bad for 2005. This wasn't good then. So, yeah, as you can see, yeah, capture my mouse. Okay, I got a little mouse there. I can't make this bigger, so you're not going to be able to read this. And I can barely read it on here.
You can scale it up.
Yeah. In view in the top, you can do scale.
Oh God, one sec.
It's covered by the mirror screen.
How do you?
Right control.
Okay, I can reference control. View scale mode.
Yeah, and the screen.
Oh dear.
Oh, it didn't like that. I can't. These live demos. There we go. Oh, look at that. It's beautiful. Thank you guys so much. Look at all those pixels. Look at all those pixels. No! Dude, I tried so hard. One sec. God decided to not mirror my display anymore. Boom! Now we're hacking with style, baby. So, yeah. So if you answer, okay. So, oh Jesus, this is Temple OS version 5.03, and as you can see, it's running inside of a VM. So now we're booted to we're not booted to the actual VM yet. We're booted to the disk that we inserted in that disk drive. So we want to install it. So here it's saying, do you want to install on a hard drive? If you answer no, you can play with the live CD without installing. We'll install it because we're real gamers. Oh God. So the right text will tell you, I think, kind of what it's doing. No, that's how to install it. Are you installing inside VMware, QEMU, VirtualBox, or similar software? Yeah, how'd you know? It's normal for this to freeze for a moment or two. Press A key.
10 minutes.
Oh boy. It didn't even, oh wait, no, it is, okay. I was like, it didn't even, it didn't ask me where to install it. I mean, it only has one hard drive, so normally a normal, like, sane operating system would ask you, like, hey, where do you want me installed? What data do you want me to overwrite? Not Temple OS. Temple OS knows where it needs to be installed, all right? It knows what's up. And look at that, now it's done and it says, you want to reboot? Of course I do. And now we're going to reboot the operating system, so.
I like all the flashing.
Okay, one sec. I think it's installed. It just didn't, it booted back to the,
Because you have to change the boot order.
Yeah, okay, so essentially, we're gonna shut this down real quick. Not because I'm scared, but because I wanna shut it down. Power off. So, again, that was really fast because it's really small. But what we did is we took the CD drive that we put into our virtual machine. We installed the OS from there onto our actual hard drive that we made, that 10 gigs that I gave it. And now, to boot to our actual operating system, we need to go back in here, go to storage, and we're going to take our Temple OS disk, and we're just going to eject it. So, what's the best way to do that here? Remove disk from virtual drive. So we're taking that disk out of the drive, hitting OK, and now we're going to try to boot back into it because it should boot to the new operating system now. Yes. Okay. So here's the Temple OS bootloader. So it's like, where do you want to drive, or where do you want to boot to? Normally, this is on like a dual booted system. This would be where it says, do you want to boot to Linux or Windows? Here we have the C drive and the D drive. I don't know what either of those are, but C drive or the old boot record. We're going to go to the C drive because that's what you normally do. And we're uncompressing dictionaries, and would you look at that?
Take a tour?
So now we're into the operating system. We could probably play the racing game. So take a tour. Sure, what's the tour? That's pretty much it for the talk. We've installed a VM. If anybody has any questions about the VM's process or how to install it, like, I'm going to be hanging out after this, just chilling. For anybody that wants to ignore this and remind me how to, oh boy. I'm not going to lie, it's been a while since I've used Temple OS. How do you get to the games?
Just throw me your messages whenever.
There's a game somewhere. Hold up. I have used Temple OS before. I also don't know. Well, I know where we can go. Oh boy.
Yeah.
I can't.
We can look at the Bible.
Yeah, okay. Okay, well,
Just click really fast.
I can't get to the menus. The menus don't stay up. I'm typing over here. So if anybody's used Linux before, this is not Linux. It does not operate like Linux, and it throws a lot of errors. I don't know how to use any of this.
I'm having to.
Yeah, we'll go to help. Nope, that's an error. Pray. That's actually a command.
Actually, no, it glitches. It always shows every other help message. I mean, an error message.
Oh, it does. I don't know how to do. Damn. Okay, one sec. The other thing is you can remove things and then you're never getting them back.
Probably like 7.
F7.
Nothing.
No.
Oh wow, it actually showed up.
Terminal. What's this flashing? Oh, hey, here's another terminal. Cool.
So much stuff.
Help and index. Oh boy. Is there anything about games in here? Does anybody remember that?
God.
Well, there's Holy See here if you guys want to learn about the language that he wrote himself. This language I've not looked at all. It's weird and weirdly similar to C, and I don't know the differences between the two. It's crazy impressive that he did this. Unfortunately, there's absolutely no use for it.
Can't find God.
Godward's cool. So that's supposed to act as an oracle, and it's supposed to like use like atmospheric noise to like generate messages from a higher being. But I prefer the math tool, which has to install. Never mind. I don't know what that is. I mean, these are all help messages. So.
Why does it stop? Oh, there we go. Games, I found it.
Wait, how'd you get to it?
So you see that flashing menu thing on the top of the
This?
there, click on that.
Oh yes! Yes. Okay. Okay. So the literally the most impressive thing is that the dude who made this wrote the graphics libraries, a 3D graphics library by himself for this. So everything that's running here, he made from scratch. So I mean, this is literally it. I'm holding one button to go straight, and then I'm probably. We are Tokyo drifting, baby.
Are these like one-bit graphics with hither?
Oh, so If this doesn't, I stopped moving. If this doesn't sell you on on virtual machines or why you should set up a virtual machine, I don't know what could. Because like, how else are you supposed to experience this glory if you don't have a virtual machine?
For 17 megabytes.
Yeah, I mean, it literally costs you nothing. So now you can just install. You could maybe.
there are unfun games.
I would give somebody. I would give somebody a pizza. I would buy somebody an entire pizza on on our club's dollar if you install this bare metal on a laptop. If you come to the laptop and you shut it down, boot up, and it boots straight into this, I'd be blown away. 'Cause I don't know if that would work.
Oh my god.
Because I don't know what architecture this is written for.
Is that so worth the computer?
Give it a shot. See how do I exit? Okay, there we go.
Wait, it's like 810.
Oh yeah, I think he said these were. There's a ton of live streams where you can go talk about him as he made all this. He said these were things that like never started working or something. Oh yeah, I refuse to rip out the original, so this is intentionally crappy and includes for demonstration purposes. Write games, don't play them. I don't know. This is a tank game. No, oh, that guy's moving. There we go. You turn him blue.
Is we're gonna invade Russia?
Is this what these kids are talking about when they're talking about Fortnite?
This is Splatoon 3, right?
So I get my victory royales. So there's that. There's oh look, you can use this to study for your exams. Yeah, enter your available gate type in the order you prefer them to be used. I personally go OR first, then XOR, and then OR 3, and then NAND 3, and NOR 3, and AND 3, and not, and NAND. Did I miss any? Oh, there we go. How big is the table size?
Oh my god, is this?
7.
7?
No, I'm just making.
Enter the hex. Oh, enter the hex truth table column values of inputs. Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay. I don't know. I wouldn't use this to practice your 281 homework or whatever. But yeah, we're also at time, so if feel free to go and do whatever. I'm honestly probably going to keep messing around with this because I haven't gotten an install working. But if there's any questions, oh shit, I didn't even talk about the CTF. There's a CTF. I forgot to say that. For anybody that's going to be around this weekend, I've put it in the CTF channel in the Discord, but there's going to be a CTF that starts at 10 a.m. tomorrow and runs for 48 hours. So it'll be done Sunday. Feel free to, I'm going to be sitting, just hanging out in the Student Innovation Center in the SIC for like 2 hours tomorrow, noon to 2. It's all in the Discord channel, but I'm going to hang out. I'm going to get started on the CTF. I'm going to go over how to do some of the basic challenges, how to join a team, what the general flow of it is and everything. So hopefully you guys come with WSL or something installed and you can mess around and have some fun with it. But even if you don't show up to the SIC, the password and username to join the CTF are in the channel. Just hang out, try it out, see what it's like, and we'll do a more formal one next week maybe when I'm going to be here longer. So
Next week, probably, maybe sort of.
maybe sort of. So good work, everybody. I'm going to play Excalibur.